Thank you very much, and I'll move on to the Mayor's Report COVID-19 March 2020. I'll just run through this quickly because you know I know I sent it to you yesterday, and it was great to have some feedback from people in relation to it. So, and this is very much drawing on the experience that Christchurch has had and setting us up for recovery, so that we're not just focusing on the response period, because the response period will go on for some time, but the recovery is going to go on for a very long time. And as I've said in the paper, and it's a phrase that's been used that I picked up during the earthquakes, and it's been used many times even recently over this current crisis, which is that this is not a sprint, it is a marathon, and we do need to pace ourselves and make sure that we retain enough energy for the city to get across the line, you know, in terms of a marathon approach. It is going to be a marathon effort, and it does have to be collaborative. And I guess that I want to give some reassurance too. I know that I'm not immune to the contacts that people make, and I get tagged into social media comments. There has been some misunderstanding about the next paper, the Council Funding and Financial Relief Package. This is just the interim package just to deal with the immediate problem, which is people are going to have rate bills turning up in the next few weeks, and they're going to find themselves in a challenging position about juggling bills, because they're cash-strapped, and they're cash-strapped for a number of reasons, but largely as a result of the areas that have been picked up by central government, recognising that central government has stepped in and are paying the lion's share of what is to be covered, but recognising that there will still be people that will find it difficult to pay their rates right now. It has been, you know, asked about why we wouldn't go the full hog at the moment, and there's been debate around, you know, the rates increase that was included in our draft annual plan. They are all decisions for later on. So we're not in a state of immediacy for any of those issues. So when we get to the next package, then I think that I'm clear that it is not the big picture stuff. All of the issues that people have put on the table that they've asked us to look at, these are all of the things that we're going to be working through over the next few weeks. But this is one that can't wait. It is one that is going to be subject to people getting rate bills for the current financial year, not the next financial year, and we need to be able to deal with that. At the same time, and I've said this in this paper, you know, we're in a state of national emergency. We're very much in the response phase of what is a major global crisis. Now, that being said, we have a regional emergency management plan in place, and it does offer guidance both in terms of the reduction and readiness side of things, which are what happens in the context of a pre-crisis environment, and recovery. And response and recovery is obviously going to be the focus of our immediate attention. But what our own earthquake experience tells us, and what the plan tells us, is that we must begin the process of recovery planning now. We actually can't wait until the crisis is over. It has to start now. And, you know, if there's just one thing that we've learned from our earthquakes, it is that. If there's a second one, and it is the most important one, it is to remember that we start with what we've got. We actually look to the existing strengths that exist within our city, and in this case, in my experience, would say in the wider Greater Christchurch area, which means we do need to reach out to our strategic partners. We need to be reaching out to Waimakariri, to Selwyn, to Environment Canterbury, and of course to Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu. And when we look at the Greater Christchurch Partnership, it brings all of them together in addition to NZTA the Greater Christchurch unit within the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, and also in the current environment, Regenerate Christchurch. So it brings all of the right people together, and the Canterbury District Health Board as well. So it brings everyone together that we should have together. There's a real strength in it, and it has existing frameworks that we can build on and actually can repurpose to the recovery side of things at the same time that we still have aspirational goals for Greater Christchurch. Now, I've restated this whole question of what recovery is. It's about supporting the cultural, emotional and physical well-being of individuals and communities. It's minimising the escalation of the consequences of the emergency. It's taking opportunities to regenerate and enhance communities in ways that meet future needs, and that's across social, economic, natural and built environments. But as you'll see from my paper, it's the social and the economic which are massive in terms of the impact that this will have. And of course, all the time we've got to be thinking about reducing future exposure to hazards and their associated risks. And I remember the first recovery seminar that I went to after the earthquakes, and I remember someone saying, look, everyone talks about, the existing sort of what we want to, our aspirational goals for a recovery and what the future holds. But they don't look back and say, well, what is it about the past that we'd want to build on, and what is it about the past that we'd actually like to take the opportunity to fix? And do we ever want to be exposed to a hazard like this again? And I think that's something we did learn from the earthquakes, is to embed in that whole philosophy of making the city safer and more secure into the future, and always being mindful of what the impacts could be. So it's more than building on our strengths. It's actually not reinforcing the things that perhaps led to the problems arising, and this is one of those challenges that we've got to keep our eye on. At the same time, it is vital that the Council contributes to the response, and as you saw, the 0800 number that we were able to put in, while maintaining the essential services that our city relies on to continue to operate. But there are immediate decisions we're being asked to make to support our residents and businesses get through this period of uncertainty, and we do have to remember that the government has shouldered the lion's share of the immediate cost of support for businesses and workers who are experiencing hardship. But we also need to remember that every decision we make now will impact on our recovery, and there can be no silo thinking. We must be ready to release as much work as possible when the lockdown ends, as our economic recovery depends on us doing so. So, and that's why Dawn has been working with Christchurch NZ, our economic development agency, and that they are going to have to refocus their activities. So the organisation and economic development will really come through as we urgently bring our collective networks together to develop the Christchurch Economic Recovery Plan. So there's a social recovery plan to this process as well. And when I think of the word economy, I actually think that it's not financial economy, because economies serve people. So it's all about people in the end. But we also know that the government's calling for projects both locally and regionally to kickstart our local economy. So we'll be contributing projects to that, to the government's call for those projects as well. And we're using Christchurch NZ to engage more broadly so that we can pick up those private sector ones that make sense to include in that wider package, because there's a lot of projects out there that have got a public benefit that we can see potentially could qualify for that kind of support. And the purpose of the paper is to ensure that Council establishes recovery and implementation planning immediately, building on our strengths, engaging our communities and setting Greater Christchurch and our region on a firm foundation to rebuild the economic and social fabric of our communities. And that means we do need to agree to review and adjust our strategic frameworks in the light of the COVID-19 crisis to ensure they're fit for purpose to facilitate recovery. So that's the proposal. The recommendations are that we note the emergency management recovery plan and lessons learned from our earthquake experience, which mean recovery planning should commence immediately, building on our existing strengths, relationships and strategic frameworks, and engaging fully with all our diverse communities. And that note that work has commenced on a Christchurch economic recovery plan in partnership with Christchurch NZ, and that we'll be submitting projects in response to the government's call for infrastructure projects. Note the impact that council decisions made at this time will have on our medium to long-term recovery. And these need to be factored into our annual and long-term.
It's Dawn here, you're completely cutting out.
Oh, sorry, I don't know why. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, well, agreed to review our strategic directions together with letters of expectations issued to the Chief Executive and the External Advisory Group, just to make sure that they're fit for purpose. And we note the features of the Greater Christchurch Partnership as the basis for this, and request them to urgently reassess the work that's been done on the Greater Christchurch Strategic Framework. It's known as Greater Christchurch 2050. All right, so that's the outline of the paper, and I'll now open up for questions. Sorry, I wasn't able to look at questions in the meantime, so I'll just see where they start. Okay, right. Who was the first one? Andrew.
Thank you. So I've got two questions. Certainly agree that the review of the strategic directions and two letters of expectation is the right thing to do. Also aware that we've got the EAG and staff continuing to work on LPP development, so there's a need to do that sooner rather than later. How quickly or when are we expecting to be able to get that review underway and decision making around that?
Sorry, I missed the entire question. Can you say that again?
Yeah, absolutely. So this relates to the review of the strategic directions and the two letters of expectation. When are we expecting to get that work underway and decisions made, given that LPP development needs to continue, and if there are changes, we need to be able to signal those sooner rather than later?
I think that what I'm trying to get today, and I recognise that there's a lot of work to do. I mean, people have asked about, briefings on this. I've worked quite hard to bring something to council today just to set a direction, and I'm happy that having presented it here, that we could have a briefing and a workshop. I really want to get a steer that we're willing to go down this track, so that and then come back to council next week with an update on proposed timelines and how. So it's kind of like the purpose of this report is just to explain the why. Why would we want to start thinking about recovery straight away? And I think I've answered that in the paper and also in my comments this morning.
Great, thank you. And that probably covers my second question. Clearly there are a number of things that are needing to be briefed on or possibly workshopped. And my second question really was just a request for a briefing on Greater Christchurch 2050. That clearly would be covered in the comments that you've just made. So thank you.
Thank you. Now, sorry, I missed one of the questions before, Andrew. Melanie.
Sorry. You've answered one of them. I just wanted to know about the regularity of our meetings, because it seems to me it'd be quite good to just have a lot of flexibility there rather than pre-scheduling them in ahead of time, although I understand that it would be helpful for staff to know when meetings are going to be so they can be preparing for them ahead of time rather than not having much notice maybe. But we might need some flexibility, so can you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I did talk about whether there should be more meetings or less. The council staff wanted to have the second one because I'd originally proposed that we'd just have one meeting scheduled a month, but council staff felt that 2 meetings would be appropriate, but I can still call the meeting with sufficient notice, but not for the purposes of our standing orders. Without, I would need to give 14 days notice, so it would be better that I can give a week's notice. So if we need to call one in between, it will be an extraordinary meeting, but it's like next week's meeting is an extraordinary meeting, not because it's going to be extraordinary, but because I can't meet the notice requirements.
Thank you.
Right, the next one was Aaron.
Kia ora. So we all understand the why, and I think you've explained that really well for people listening in, so that's fantastic. My big question's around the how, and in the recommendations we've got adopt the schedule, which takes us through to the end of June. That would be suggesting that we're in lockdown till the end of June. Could you clarify that first?
Sure, and I did wonder whether people would think that. It doesn't assume lockdown. What it assumes is the inability of getting committees of the whole up and running before then. But if everything miraculously got into a position where we could set ourselves up for that, there will be time to do it. Originally, the idea was to have it just for April and May, and it was my call, and I said, look, can we include June, because I don't want to put any pressure on staff in the lead up to the annual plan. So the annual plan is going to be such a high priority, and there's going to be a lot of public interest in that. It doesn't mean that we won't be live streaming back in the council, but at least if we can hold the council operating together as one team just throughout this period, then I think it would give the council staff a reassurance that they know that it is going to be the council that they're getting papers to and not the individual committees of the whole, because restoring the delegations right now or at any time at the end of the lockdown prior to the resolution on the annual plan, I think would put staff in a spin, to be honest.
Okay, so then my follow-up question, I've just got the 2, is because it says under those dates that as intended members will attend the meetings via audio or audio-visual link, so understand that. But I note that in the next 3 months, the decisions we will be making will have incredible impacts on our city and our city's financials for many years to come, even though the IMF are saying the can be an economic recovery from the recession by 2021, which is next year, which would suggest a sprint for a year, and then maybe go into a run and a jog. But for your marathon, but it's going to be out of the blocks fast and hard. But if we're trying to do our meetings like this over the phone where people are dropping in and out, you can't read body language, it's hard to ask questions, it doesn't instill confidence in me that that we could deliver on what our city needs. And so my question is, to get to it, is that supermarkets are open at the moment and allowing 100 people in, they're keeping a 2-metre distance, this is operating well. Can we not do our briefings and our meetings in a room possibly the chamber, where we keep our distancing and we have systems in place to deliver on what our city needs.
Look, I mean, you raise a very good question, Aaron, and to be honest, it's one that I've asked myself, and the Prime Minister is really asking us to all model good behaviour. But I agree. If we're not in lockdown, then obviously we will be in the chamber. But we'll be in the chamber as the council, not as committees of the whole. So we can resolve all of those issues, as long as we're not in the lockdown. But I'm going to take on board that, and I'm going to ask Dawn to take that on board as well. And together, her and I will raise this up the chain, because we are utterly dependent on everyone acting in compliance with the or staying within their bubbles, and I think we have to model good behaviour. But you're quite right that the decisions that we're going to be making before the end of June are vitally important to the city, and this is not an ideal mechanism. It is much easier when we are, and much more open, and we're being as open and transparent as we possibly can with this process. But you're quite right, we do need to think of that. I'm hoping that we're not in lockdown when it comes to making decisions on the annual plan. And if we're not in lockdown, we will definitely be in the council chamber. Right, so the next person is Yanni.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just wondering why we got the paper so late without the ability to be briefed on it first before being asked to make decisions.
You're not being asked to make decisions other than to agree, and I'm happy for the words "in principle" to go in there. I'm just trying to get a direction from people. The paper is simply the why. I wrote the paper myself, that's why it's late. I have been receiving additional information that I've included in it, so I included all the Christchurch NZ stuff in yesterday. I really wanted councillors to be able to see the breadth and the extent of the issues that we need to think about as we shift our thinking, actually have a parallel stream of work which focuses on recovery as well as response. And the thing is that we're going to have to take responsibility as individual councillors for a lot of the hard yards on this, and I'm going to be calling on every single one of you to take responsibility for different parts of feeding some thinking around our strategic directions, obviously the letter of expectations, the 2 letters of expectations, but more importantly to start thinking about that Greater Christchurch Partnership and how it can be oriented to basically feed into our long-term plans collectively across the 3 councils and the regional council, so the 2 districts, the city and the region. So it's a different way of thinking, but we have an opportunity to actually turn this into an opportunity, but we've got to start thinking about recovery. So I apologise, I should have said in principle we agree to go down the track. Next week I'm happy to come back with a far more focused report, and as I say, this is the why. You're going to have the how, and it's going to be not just how we can engage with our communities, it's going to be, how we engage with our strategic partners. It's how we're going to engage with our communities, because social and economic recovery are going to have to go hand in glove with an eye on the future as well. Dawn, I know, wanted to say something as well.
Thank you, Mayor. I think from myself and my staff's perspective, I am really pleased that this report is here from the Mayor in such a short timeline. It's only been a week, which is giving us clear direction about where it is we're anticipating the council to go. And then what we'll obviously need to follow on that will be the detail, but I welcome the information that is in there to help me guide the organisation from the political.
I think on points 4, 5 and 7, there is a complete lack of clarity and analysis of why those things would be beneficial, particularly 7. But if you looked at our history and look at the urban development strategy and do an assessment of how effective it's been for the city, I think you would probably come to some quite different conclusions in 7. But we haven't had a chance to discuss that, and I am really concerned about 4 and 5, that it basically implies that work's going to be done without any clear reference to where we make decisions as council with our communities and with transparency. And it just feels like we're reading about stuff on the front page of the newspaper or in the newspaper, like the Christchurch report around the labour force, without having any briefings or information. So, I just want to express my concern that although these things are noting provisions, they're not clear decisions, and yet they seem to be directing work to happen away from us in terms of local government.
No, look, you've raised some really good points, Yanni, and, I do apologise. I'm not an expert report writer, and I was trying to set context by using the noting provisions and then agree. What I should have done is I should have made it more personal to a view that I have been working on. And because I've been on the Greater Christchurch Partnership all the way through, and I do have some history and knowledge of the UDS, which you do as well, and I wouldn't want to overlook the significance of any of the points that you've raised. And so, look, what I'd like to do is to, and perhaps if I could ask Jo if she could change amend the recommendation number 6 to say agree in principle to review our strategic directions, and then agree in principle to discuss with the Greater Christchurch Partnership the work that has been done. So rather than the reason is that we actually have been briefed on Greater Christchurch 2050. We were briefed on it by Christchurch NZ, but it was last year, so people may have forgotten that, and it may be that I want to invite Christchurch NZ to come to the next meeting, to join us at the next meeting and to give us a briefing on the work that they're doing. You have to recognise that people don't sit around and wait, so nothing, the government hasn't sat around and waited. We're joining collaboratively and collectively with the government. So nothing Christchurch NZ is doing is overarching. Nothing that they're doing is external from what others are doing. It's actually working with, the council through our chief executive is working with Christchurch NZ to kind of embrace all the different channels of work that are going on at the moment to make sure that Christchurch is right up there. We've got experience that we can share with others, and if you don't mind me saying, and I've said it in the report, nobody will ever understand what went wrong after the February earthquake and why government felt that it had to intervene the way they did until people understand that Christchurch City Council did not develop a recovery mechanism after the September earthquake. So they just left it to central government. Well, we're not going to leave it to anyone, And besides which, this is affecting the entire country. But I wouldn't agree with leaving it to central government anyway. We can do this, and we can start now. So I'm going to change them all to agree in principle that we're going to go down this track. I want to make sure that we do engage our community, and I see you and the community board members, every single one of you, as absolute assets in terms of the leadership role that your communities will be looking for from you. So, so that's my.
Can I just say, I think the problem with 7 and with 4 is that there's no clarity about that being considered. So it would be really good to know the process for which the projects will be considered by our council before they're put forward to central government, and it would also be really good under 7
Yanni, there
for us
won't
to
be
have a
time.
consideration
There
around
won't
whether
be
the Greater
time.
Christchurch Partnership is the right model or whether it needs tweaks to its governance arrangement. Because
Yanni,
what we've heard in the past is that we are outvoted and in the minority, and yet the greatest impact is on us as a city.
thanks, Yanni. Look, I'm noting that work has commenced on the Christchurch Economic Recovery Package, and that we will be submitting projects in response to the government's call for infrastructure projects, is a factual statement of what is happening. So I'm happy to let the Chief Executive respond to your question about the selection of infrastructure projects. You have to remember that they've asked for private sector ones as well. So to suggest that we shouldn't be, or that we should be actually referring these to council is ridiculous, because nobody will wait for the city council to give them permission to submit the private sector project. So I'll get Dawn to speak to you now about the infrastructure projects that are going through. Can I hand over to Dawn, please?
Cool.
Thank you, Mayor. Can members hear me?
Yep.
Members, can you hear me? Yep. Yes.
Yep.
So there are 3 streams of work currently underway, and this is reacting to the timescales that have been put on us by central government, and I don't think this is an unreasonable request for central government. So our initial work was with MB through the Infrastructure Commission, which we sat on a national conversation with government departments and a small number of local authorities, where we were asked to provide information by the end of the day in terms of which projects were likely to be impacted by the lockdown and what the position was in our council, and we provided that information. Secondly, we were asked in a letter from Mark Binns around the Crown, and I may not get the terminology quite right, and I'm sure the Mayor will correct me if I'm wrong, the Crown Infrastructure Partnership, which was, could we provide a list of schemes of projects that were over 10 million, and there were criteria around being shovel ready within 6 months. So that was just a factual piece of work. We're currently collating that, and we're doing that under the banner of Canterbury Mayoral Forum. That work is currently being collated and will be completed tomorrow, and that will just be a factual list of schemes that could meet that criteria that the government has put out. And then thirdly, from a city council perspective, we have flagged that we believe there aren't just council schemes, but there are schemes that may be available through our own companies and also from the private sector that could have public benefit that would be over this 10 million figure, and we didn't want government to be not cited on those matters. So we're not doing a prioritisation or putting some things in and putting some things out. We're doing it purely on the basis of the objective questions we've been asked by central government, and we want to ensure that Christchurch, and therefore Greater Christchurch and Canterbury, are putting forward its best possible set of schemes to ensure that if there is resources available, that we are able to secure that resourcing.
Okay, so Right, so I'll move on to the next one, Mike Davidson.
Kia ora. My question around the community board, and obviously acknowledging the reduction in resources and the reviewing of the emergency delegations after reverting back to level 2. But now that we have that members aren't required to be physically present for quorum numbers, can we actually start looking at reinstating some or all of the community board delegations and meetings ahead of the review?
I'll leave that to Dawn, but my understanding is that there's just a resource issue with staff at the moment, given I know that some of the community boards are meeting informally, but it's some of the council staff who would otherwise be governance staff for the community boards have been reoriented to some of the crisis management work. So I'll hand over to Dawn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Certainly, what I would do, Councillor, is we will continually review the position, and if we are able to move as quickly as possible, then we will do that. So please let me have a little bit of time to come back to you in terms of when that likely could be.
Great. Thank you. And I guess another opportunity potentially could be to organise community board chairs and deputy chairs meetings just so they can get up to play together.
I'm really happy to do that. If it would be useful. Anyway, I'll leave that to Dawn, but that would be fine, but I'm really happy to link into it if that would be useful.
Certainly very happy to do that. I would just stress it has only been a week since the lockdown, so very happy to do that, and obviously we are sending information on a daily basis to members and to community board members as well as to our staff and wider community, but very happy to do that.
Yeah, I think a few of us have got cabin fever already. Wonderful place to walk from, the CBD, I have to say. So Jimmy Chen had a couple of questions on...
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Do you hear from me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have quickly for three the questions. First one, because the Canterbury and Christchurch, we have established the emergency management recovery plan. Also, the Christchurch economic development plan for dealing with the economic, also the COVID-19 lockdown issue. That's most important, crucial. But I just want to know whether these two plans we implement it, then the annual plan or future the long-term plan will be overridden by this the package or through this the recovery plan.
No.
If no, I'm concerned because the annual plan, the due date will be by 9th of April. We have not yet get all the feedback, and after that, we might have the hearing, even have an oral submission. But now we have to dealing with the COVID-19 lockdown, the immediate issue, and also, engage with the Christchurch NZ to establish those Christchurch economic recovery plan and also for implementation. This is a little bit, for me, a little bit confused.
Yeah, I know it's confusing. The emergency management recovery plan already exists. It's actually an emergency management plan. It already exists. It's existed for years. It's been updated 2 years ago. So it's just simply a plan that exists. It's what happens in an emergency management. It's what happens in a crisis. It's what we do in response. And it also talks about preparedness and recovery. So it's something that we that sort of kind of ticks on in the background. We have a whole civil defence function within council. We're constantly aware of it, and how our whole resilience reporting has built that whole sense of community resilience into it. The economic development plan is actually about how do we get the future of our economy working well in the post-crisis environment, and so the two are related but not impactful. So we're going to have to work out the appropriate process for the annual plan. All the numbers are out the window, every single number, so our income has been affected, as you've seen. The decision we make today will make an impact. So all of these things have changed, and we will work out the best possible way for us to get to a point where we can make good decisions with good information, as best possible information as we can possibly muster by the time we get to the decision point. We will both workshop that, we'll discuss it at council meetings between now and then, and we will get to a position where people understand very clearly the decisions that we've made. So the two are related, but they are not an override. They're really, really good, and we will have some more information as we go. This was just a first start.
Yes. Okay,
So,
thank you, Mayor.
Question. Yeah.
Second question is, because based on your report, it looks like not only our council emergency committee for dealing with this COVID-19 lockdown issue or future economic recovery issue, but also the Greater Christchurch Partnership and also the Canterbury Mayor Forum, as well as regional civil defense emergency management group, are all dealing the same issue. So we have a common goal. But same as the Yanni and the Mallory, the concern, whether we can get a briefing or presentation regularly regarding to the Greater Christchurch Partnership. Because my understanding, their original function is for the future, for the Greater Christchurch, like the Great Christchurch 2050. But now, they have a COVID-19 lockdown issue, and also for future the Greater Christchurch, the economic recovery. That's very important. So as a councillor, we all play the governance role. We should have this information, and also maybe some issue. My view should be have the council internal have review, make decision, then bring to the Greater Christchurch Partnership join the meeting. It's my recommendation.
Yeah. Look, I actually think that the Greater Christchurch Partnership, as you know, we're a member of, and we're also a member of the Canterbury Mayoral Forum. Both of them have got websites. All of their, their agendas are public agendas. They're all online. They're actually on the hub too that you can look at as well. The Greater Christchurch Partnership one is. The Canterbury Mayoral Forum has got a website which you can go to. I've put the links into the reports themselves, but look, I'm really happy to get some more information about this for the next week's report. I think that for me it was really important just to get us focused on the need to think about recovery now, because if we don't start thinking about it now, we will be too late. You are quite right to highlight the fact that we've got all of these different partnerships and forums operating. We need to play to their strengths, and the last thing we need is duplication. And with central government playing its role at the moment, it is absolutely vital that we work together as much as we can, because that's what government will be looking for.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Last question is paragraph 6. And if council will review the new and the letter of expiration, how do you make the first priority? It's very important, because otherwise the management level under the leadership of the phone, CEO, they have no direction or strategy to implement or prepare those particular for the long-term plan. So I just want to know what is the time frame we will review the new strategic directions and the letter of the expectations.
That's why I said to Yanni earlier on in response to his very good question, and yours is a very good question too, is that I'm going to change the recommendation that we agree to it in principle, and I'll come back next week with a timeline and a proposal for the how. This is just the why.
Okay. Yes.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
I'll move on
thank you so much. Thank you,
thank you, Jimmy. Thanks very much. Very helpful. Pauline?
Oh, yeah, kia ora. Look, mine was just following on actually from Yanni's discussion on point 4, and with the infrastructure projects that the government's calling for. Now, am I right in thinking that it's over $10 million projects? Or is it all of them?
Dawn, can you answer that?
Yes, I can answer that. Yes, for the shovel-ready ones, it's over 10 million. So what we've done is we've done individual projects, but we've also looked at programs of projects as well.
Yeah, okay. So is there, I mean, I thought that there would be some involvement with the committee chairs on these, just to make sure that, you know, we haven't overlooked anything that could be included. So is that going to be still a go or not?
Mayor, do you want me to answer that, or do you have a view?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Well, I was just wondering, I thought there was going to be some contact with committee chairs over, the infrastructure projects that we're identifying and prioritising here. Is that still possible?
That was my intention for the capital program before the call for projects came out. So, I mean, because we're going to have to get started on the annual plan. We're going to have to progress work on the annual plan very quickly. But Dawn, I'm happy for you to. I think it's imperative that the relevant committee chairs are engaged in this part of the process.
So I'm happy to do that. The thing I would stress is we're not removing things out. We're just doing on the factual basis of what is 10 million and over.
Yeah.
Because we want to be able to put in as much as possible into government.
Yes.
So I'm happy the list will be collated by tomorrow. I'm happy to share that, but I will have to submit it tomorrow as well. So I'm happy to have a conversation with the individual chairs. Yeah.
And you're submitting
very little
tomorrow.
time. I'll have the information tomorrow, and I'll have to submit it tomorrow.
Well, I'm really impressed by
that. As you see, we're getting very little time.
Yes, I know, and our worry is that Christchurch gets overlooked, in the rush by other cities that seem to think they have a better call on this. So thank you for that. But it would be really nice to see it as well. And the other thing is that I'm just supporting both Jimmy and Yanni in what they're saying about the visibility of the work being done by the partnerships and forums, because that's something that has been kind of lacking. So if we can address that as well through any briefings and being directed to up and coming meetings and agendas and things like that, that would be really good. And then there was just one other thing with the committee meeting. So that, for instance, my committee meeting that was due last Wednesday and cancelled, there's a couple of things on there that we could probably progress really quickly, like, for instance, the biodiversity fund applications that would enable people on their private land to actually get cracking on these projects that might only involve one person putting fence posts in. So I'm just wondering if we can have a look at the committee work plans and get these things brought forward where possible.
Mayor, can I answer that if that's all right?
Yes, I'd rather that you did.
Thank you. What I've asked my management team is to look at all of the agendas and the reports that are currently likely to be coming through, to give me a view on that so that they can then talk to their individual chairs of the committees of the whole to make sure that we're prioritising the right things at this point in time so we can take them for decisions. So I completely agree with what you're suggesting. We're now moving back into BAU. That work is currently being done, and I'm expecting my principal advisors to each of the chairs to be talking with you next week.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Dawn, and thanks, Leanne. Over.
Sorry, I've got to turn my mic back on. Melanie.
Oh, thanks, Leanne. Yes, it says for recommendation 6 about reviewing strategic directions and the letters of expectations. I've just had a quick look through our strategic directions, and this is maybe what you're intending, but I can't actually see anything that I would change in there or probably add either. So I was just wondering what your intention was with that.
Look, sorry, I'll just go to that part of the paper. At the moment, the strategic framework is built on a series of principles, all of which are relevant to decision making. In recovery as well. So it's actually the principles that we agreed to are going to prove their weight in gold when it comes to the question of recovery. But it just covers everything. The strategic directions, though, enabling active and connected communities to own their future. Yes, that's a big tick. Meeting the challenge of climate change through every means available, that's a big tick because this is actually an opportunity to step that up. Ensuring a high quality drinking supply that is safe and sustainable. Nothing wrong with that, except that for most people that means without chlorine. And and I think we're going to have to be upfront with the organisation, but I want the organisation to have a look into this because it may be that getting the water safety plan, which is the key to the without chlorine, I think there may need to be a bit of give in that, depending on what priorities we can get through different systems. We've got the annual plan, we've got the long-term plan, we've got to look at things across the board. Accelerating the momentum the city needs, that's absolutely fine. In fact, we need to accelerating does mean to increase, so that's ideal. Ensuring rates are affordable and sustainable, there's an even bigger challenge on that. So that's true, but I don't think that I would stop at those. I think that there will be others that we will need to think of, and I don't want us to workshop them now. I just want us to agree in principle that we're going to have a look at them.
Okay, that sounds okay. I agree with everything that you said, but I do still think the water is a priority. And just one other question as well in recommendation 4, just so I'm clear. So with Council working on the Christchurch Economic Recovery Package and submitting projects in response to the government's call for infrastructure projects, so will all of that be coming to, any projects you're submitting, will they be coming to Council? There's Council meetings for us to agree to before, or have I missed something?
My view is no, but I think they'll be advised at the same time. So, Dawn, it's the restriction of the time frames that we're under, and we don't want to miss the boat. So, Dawn?
I agree with you, Mayor. I will circulate the list as soon as I have it, which will be sometime tomorrow.
I would. These are
just ones that are going to the government that meet the criteria that they've set, and they're statements of facts of what is shovel ready. So it's not. These are not things that we particularly want to prioritise or whatever. It's not going through an evaluation exercise. It's going through what is ready, what has a strategic... I mean, we do want the strategic advantage that they represent, because we want to win this case with central government. But I think that... I mean, that was my view on it. But, Dawn, do you want to just be a little bit more on that?
You're absolutely right, Mayor. In reality, there are clear guidance that's come from the Crown Infrastructure Partnership, which is that it has to be over 10 million, it has to be shovel ready, has to be able to operate within 6 months, if not quicker, and has to have regional or national impact. So, you know, it's not a case of us doing the pick and choose. We have to be able to meet the criteria, and that's what we will be putting forward. And clearly it's important that my team and our companies and our wider relationships outside of the council have reacted very quickly to ensure that Christchurch and Canterbury puts up a comprehensive list.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Dawn. I totally agree with that, and I guess I'm sort of getting into debate slightly, but I would rather have seen the list, you know, that you're sending tomorrow before now. And I know we're in a short space of time, so...
It's not written yet. It's being written.
I understand that, but it's almost like writing a blank cheque. I don't mean it in a bad way.
Because we can't proceed. We can't proceed unless we're chosen in that we will go through all of these issues regardless, because we have to make decisions about what we're proceeding with. But if central government is going to provide an option for us, we have got to be able to deliver the project with the strategic plan and the business case and the fact that they're shovel ready. We have to give them to them. We have to give them those. And that's just a factual statement of what we have on our books. That is not, it's not an assessment. We will do that assessment for our annual plan and for our LTP, and the urgency for reviewing that has never actually been more extreme in a non-LTP year.
Okay, thank you, Leanne.
Right, I've got a question from James and one from Sarah. I'd like to move on to the other paper too, so. James?
Kia ora. Okay. Mine is, well, it's actually in support of what Aaron Kewen was talking about earlier, about being face-to-face for these meetings, because this methodology is not working wonderfully. I know it's only audio only and we've got other options, but I don't think it's working well enough. I mean, while we're in lockdown right now, we're still an essential service, so we can meet face-to-face and in the chamber, and I think we should. But I'll just leave that there for the moment. I don't know, I can't hear anything at the moment, but I'm going to carry on. So just page 12 of the Mayor's report associated with this paper mentions Christchurch NZ and the business support package, which includes business advisors, mentors and workshops in an effort to bring it back, business back. And look, I'm worried about getting more contractors in, because remember what happened after the earthquake sequence. So we need to keep an eye on that, and also have a look at what impact that will have on their budget.
Yep, look, I totally agree with that, and thank you for raising it. The issue is that there is BAU stuff, you know, the business advisors and mentors, Christchurch NZ does that. and there is a voluntary network of mentors that are available, often recently retired businessmen and women who offer support in the community for small businesses. So it's a statement of what happens already, but obviously with some capacity to ramp it up a bit. Just because it's in the business support package doesn't mean it's being delivered by Christchurch NZ. So a number of the workshops are being held by the Chamber, and of course are working hand in glove with the Chamber as well, and we're working hand in glove with, as I understand it, with MB, who are in this space too. So I totally agree that I'm probably even more aware of contractor creep, and I love that word creep in this context, more aware than anyone of what happened after the earthquake, and also a number of the decisions and contracting arrangements that were entered into. But I'm not going to go into any of that now. We're going to get Christchurch NZ to come to the council meeting next week, and we will get some detailed breakdown, because my understanding is that absolutely, because it's in the plan or the outline of the plan as it develops, doesn't mean that Christchurch NZ is the delivery arm. There is work that the council will be doing, there is work that the private sector will be doing, and there's work that Christchurch NZ, which they currently do, which will reorient itself from that more external-facing work that they do on various activities. I mean, obviously some of that work's on hold, and they'll reorient themselves into that being that economic development agency that we can work with. It's not a question of them doing work for us. It's all in together, and I think that's really been my message around recovery. I've got Sarah.
Thanks.
Mayor, do you mind if I add to that, please?
Oh, yep, sure.
Thank you. So I just want to assure members, because fundamentally Christchurch NZ absolutely are our economic development agency. They are not thinking in isolation. They're working very closely with the council and with CCHL. This is the draft thought. We will be working on this in the next period, but I think it's commendable that they have moved quickly as they have to show that we're already doing the thinking.
Okay, Sarah.
Thank you. Just a question around the shovel-ready project. I'm really looking forward for us to hopefully be able to get some of these underway straight away. What's the potential for us to bring some forward? And there's two parts. And how far? Because I know that without current funding and planning, things aren't shovel-ready. So projects potentially how far out. But the other part is, many of these projects will be transport ones that are already supposed to be co-funded with the government. And are we expecting from the government to mostly fund them? What proportion of funding do we expect to still have to leave in our budget, if you like, to make sure these projects get done?
We can't answer that at this stage. We don't know. We don't know what the government exactly are going to do at this stage. So I just want to repeat and stress, this is just a factual piece of work.
Yep.
In terms of the levels, and that's all it is. We obviously, and you're right, shovel ready means exactly that. So stuff that is 2, 3, 4 years out, it's got to have had a business case. It has to be able to, if it's required planning, it must have either got it or very close to getting it. So we're talking about stuff that we were already going to move on very quickly. But I can't answer specifically the question about what the government are going to put in yet, but we will clearly be watching that closely.
Because I think we just need to make sure that we're managing expectations. I don't think we're expecting the government to throw a whole pile of money at us that then means that we can just cut all of the money out of our budget. Anyone?
Sean? Adela, I think that was Adela.
Yep.
Adela, I think you may need to speak again. I didn't hear it.
Sorry, it wasn't me, but I'm happy to answer the question. Just to clarify, I've been working with central government on clarifying what exactly their intentions are. Obviously, they're still working through that, but they haven't made any promises of funding. All they're saying is we are looking at how we can assist, and that might be no funding, but things like relaxing the immigration laws so that we can get more labour into the market, or prioritising projects in accordance with what is the most beneficial to the country, so that local government gets in before the private sector. So they're looking at lots of different aspects. They're not just talking about funding, and they haven't mentioned funding specifically at all, to be honest.
Yeah, okay, just wanting to make sure that we don't raise their expectations of a whole pile of funding ahead of the annual plan.
All right, so that's the end of questions. So, Joe, could you just confirm that you've made those changes to the recommendations?
Certainly. So we've added to number 6, agree in principle to review the strategic directions, and we've added in number 8, agree in principle to discuss with the Greater Christchurch Partnership the work has been done.
All right. So I'm happy to move that. Do I have a seconder? Just first one to say.
I will. Anne Galloway.
Anne Galloway. Thank you.
Yep.
Now, it's a bit difficult to understand how we debate this. So I'll just quickly run round the table is probably the easiest way to do it. So with that, I'll go to the front of the agenda and just get the list of councillors, because that's probably the easiest way. Right, so Jimmy Chen?
Yes. Yes.
Do you want to debate it, or are you happy just to leave it?
I'm happy, but just want to briefly, and I support the in principle the mayor the report, because this is extraordinary time, particularly the moment. We need to focus on the COVID-19, the lockdown period. How to take the immediate, effective, cooperate, collective way. All those different agencies can work in together, and also as a councillor, we should be informed. Particularly at least the extraordinary time period, and also in the medium and the long term, we still need to focus on the Christchurch economic recovery, because I'm aware actually this time, those economic impact will be more worse than 2008, the global financial risk. So we, as a council, we need to consider how to keep those to the balance. But I think I still appreciate the mayor, it's a short time period, can integrate all those the action and the work, and also we can get all those information to be informed. We working together, to provide the good quality of the services, particularly for those essential services to the people and to the city. I think that's very important. So in principle, I fully support the mayor's report. Thank you.
Catherine.
No debate from me, Leanne.
Thank you. Melanie.
I've just been listening to, what Aaron and James have said about possibly meeting in person. There's no, I would like to see in recommendation 1 that we add about meeting in person, if possible. If the lockdown does end on 23rd, 24th of April or earlier, it would be nice to be able to meet in person earlier. So I think that would be good to add to resolution recommendation 1. And I have some overall concerns, but so I'm not really sure how I feel about it at the moment and want to hear the debate from others.
Thank you. Pauline?
Yeah, thanks. We'll keep it brief, I think, because some people are struggling with this tourism a bit. I've learned a bit today, particularly about the infrastructure offer from the government being couched in several different forms, I think, so I'll wait to see that unfold. A little bit not sure about that immigration rules thing, because I think we'll be wanting to focus on our own workforce, but I really think that this is a good package in principle, and focusing on the need to think of our recovery alongside our response, which is a new reaction compared to what we did last time. It's really important. This is going to be a short, spiky thing with a long recovery, and I think we've turned our attention really well to what we need to do, and there's more work to be done on all of this, so just reinforcing the fact that we want to be included in visibility on all this work that's being done as much as possible as councillors. So yeah, I think that in the light of the in-principle decision, I think this is good, and I also just want to thank, of course, the staff and Leanne for the really intense work that this shows has been done over the last 1 week. It's incredible. So, yeah, I'll be supporting this today and looking forward to further work. Thank you.
Thank you. James?
Jota, just briefly, Kapai to the staff and to the Mayor, as Pauline has just mentioned, and it's good that we're on the front foot with this. We're doing something about it. So, no, I'm happy at the moment.
Mike?
No vote from me.
Anne Galloway?
Yeah, Jota, thank you. Expressing gratitude for the work that's been done, and the need to have a very clear, strong voice coming through, and the work that's been done to actually collectively to bring all those parties together and to provide a channel through which that voice can be articulated, particularly to central government, is really important, and I thank you for the work that's been done. I think it's building on the strengths that we have and using the great resource we have, for example, in Christchurch NZ. So thank you for that, and fully supportive.
Thank you. James Goff?
Yeah, just really briefly, I think the only comment that I'd make in relation to this is just a caution around the shovel-ready work, and I just think that our priority and sharp vision needs to be on what cannot go ahead as opposed necessarily to what can go ahead. So the whole city's going to need to tighten its belt, us included, except for us. There's no wage subsidy for us. So I think that's really just the comment that I'd like to make is that we're not a charity. We need to be very focused on our own finances because the whole city, with us included, is going to be going through some very, very tough times. But other than that, happy to support the recommendation.
Thanks, James. Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. Look, I want to commend the Mayor for writing a detailed report about, the post-earthquake lessons and experience, and in particular, I think the comments you've made around involving the community with full transparency, which is really important. My biggest concern with this is there's a number of assumptions in the recommendation that I just don't think stand up to scrutiny. If you certainly look at our recent history, the Greater Christchurch Partnership, I would question whether that's really the best vehicle to move forward. So I did want to move an amendment that we defer this until we have a briefing, and also that under 7, we change the notes to consider if the Greater Christchurch Partnership, with or without modification, is the appropriate structure. So from my point of view, it is good to get an indication of what we need to do. But I do agree with Jamie that, I guess the tragedy in both of these two papers is there's no discussion about how we're saving money as a city, and I think that's a bit of a shame. And because what we do know after the earthquake is so many people put their hands out to do things, contractors, consultants, the amount of money that was spent and the level of duplication was just so out of whack with actually just spending the money on doing things in local communities that made a difference. And I'd really hope that we'd learn that lesson from the earthquake so that we actually saw the value in the spend. So I just really wanted to say that, if you look at the Greater Christchurch Partnership, look at what it's achieved in the last decade. It certainly hasn't been around the social and the environmental. We've seen huge urban sprawl. We've seen motorways being built to extend into our partners' cities at the expense of our central city and at the expense of our ratepayers who are bearing a huge cost of traffic going into their local neighbourhoods. So, I don't think that's been the most successful approach. And to me it comes down to we are actually a minority around that table, and we don't, even though the impact is biggest on us, we actually are in the minority when it comes to the governance. And I think that fundamental issue is a flaw. But I'd like to have the ability to actually have a briefing so we can consider those things rather than just get a paper, after business hours last night without any chance to really look at that further. So I won't be voting for this today. There are a number of things in here that I can support, like reviewing the strategic direction, so I would ask that you put some of these separate. Thank you.
Thanks, Yanni. Aaron?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And the reasons why are clearly spelled out in this report by the Mayor. For me, it's the how. To follow on from Yanni and Jamie's point around the just asking for shovel-ready projects by the government, I feel is quite dangerous. The whole world has changed in a way that we've often said that in the past, but this has now changed in a way that is just inconceivable. At no point in history has anyone ever pushed stop on an economy. We do not know what this looks like, and so we need to be very fluid going forward. I commend the government for asking for shovel-ready projects, but they must be put in order of outcomes for each city and province. Because some shovel-ready projects have big OPEX on the other side, and that's maybe not what we need right now. Those might wait 2 or 3 years or a year. The other projects that do have really good outcomes should be the ones that are prioritised. And as elected members, we are elected by the people of our city to make decisions on their behalf of what these projects should be. So I'm saddened that we don't have an oversight of those, or don't even have the opportunity to rate them going to the government. We do have very, very different views at our table, and I think that's of a value to the people of our city. I think it's incredibly important that all views are represented, and looking at the mix of people we have, we're often not on the same page, and I think that's a good thing because it means we are representing everyone in our community. Finally, my other problem with this paper is what James raised and around us not meeting in person. I believe we are an essential service, and the decisions that are made in the next 6 months will have far-reaching consequences into the billions of dollars for our city and its recovery. And we have to be in the same room. If you can have 100 people in the same room in a supermarket, you can do it at a council, because the repercussions of us not getting this right are just, it's just too huge. It's too much on the line, too much to potentially lose. So that I cannot support us not meeting in person anymore. We must find a way to do that.
Sam?
Yeah, thanks very much, Leanne. And someone's on hold, are they? Is everyone there?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, I am.
Oh, great. Sorry, it just cut out for a moment. Well, thanks very much, Leanne, for your work on this. I think it's really good to have a long-term view of where we need to be. But I think, the crux of this is we need to look also at the real immediate challenges, which are around our annual plan and tightening our belt. And I think this gives us a really good opportunity as a council to look at those challenges on our budgets and I guess the duplication of agencies. So I think we need to be really clear on that. I have a slightly different view, I guess, to Jamie and Aaron on the government project, and that, in my view, we should take advantage of any government project that is fully funded. So not partially subsidised by the ratepayer, but entirely funded and get that into Christchurch. The more we can get the government to fund and not the ratepayer, that will be incredibly beneficial. So I think it's really important as a council that we don't send the signal today that we're an open chequebook, because that's certainly not what our ratepayers are telling us. And I think it's crucial that we deliver essential services. And, the reality is, in the times we're in, we need to look at how we reduce the nice-to-have and tighten our belt and save some money. So, look, Leanne, thank you for your work. I'm comfortable to support it today, acknowledging, though, that we've got some real challenges over the next few weeks to address the budget.
Thank you. I just was switching it back on. Phil Major.
Good morning. I agree with practically everything everyone said in some points. We're going to be going forward in the financial gun, and for the next 2, 3, might be even 10 years for the city. And if we're not careful on how we spend money or what projects we put forward, this is going to have massive repercussions for the whole city and rates going forward. I think it's important that we do what Aaron says is try and meet together. You get a lot better feel for what's going on, and surely we can do that because of, as you said, about supermarkets and things. But I think that if we can bring projects from the LTP, like if we spend a fortune on water mains, which has the benefit for everybody, which may, if we do it right, head towards getting chlorine out of our water, we'll get thanked by everyone. But if we do some nice to have things, just to spend the government's dough, I don't think we'll get thanked for it. We've got to do what we do for the whole of the city, and that everyone gets a benefit out of. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Jake McClellan.
Nothing from me other than just to remind my colleagues that government has simply asked us for a list.
Tim Scandrett.
Thank you. Look, I think the key here is the government wanting to stimulate the economy with this list of projects, 10 million and shovel ready. And I think that's really what we've got to remember, that so many people in this city and throughout New Zealand will need to retain their employment, and that's really what we've got to look at. As Jake said, it is only a list, and hopefully we can kind of grab as much as we can, to put it crudely, to stimulate our own economy, and which will help the South Island as well. I am concerned, though, we've got to keep an eye on what the projects are. I know that the red zone has been mentioned in the stretches and the Eden project. We've really got to concentrate on things that will keep employment and stimulate employment, and we do not know what the future holds with the change, or will there be a change in tourism, etc. So I think we've got to make sure that what we are putting forward and what we're going to support are actually going to put food on the table for families. And I will support this today. And thank you for the work you've done. Cheers.
Thanks, Tim. Sarah Templeton.
Thank you. I really like the way that this report's been framed, and that it acknowledges the fact that we need to plan for our recovery now, and not just the recovery but planning for the future. So we know, and Christchurch knows better than anyone in the country, that we have many things that can happen to us, and we have run the full gamut over the last decade. I think this was the last one on the list. I know that people have really concerns about the shovel-ready project, but let's remember that if a project is shovel-ready now, it means that it's already been through a council process. It's been budgeted, it's been prioritised through the long-term plan, and it's already been voted on by us as a council. Otherwise it wouldn't have got to the shovel-ready stage. When it comes to meeting in person, I think that of anyone in the city, we need to show leadership in this space and stay apart for now. I know that not seeing each other on the screen, and there may be other options around that, is inconvenient, but it's inconvenient for a lot of people right now, and being able to have the openness and transparency of being able to live stream this, no matter how awkward the on and off of the mute button might be, is really valuable for our community. I think as we've seen as a city, we need to be investing in risk reduction and resilience. And while this isn't a report on the annual plan and on rates, we need to make sure that we are ready for anything else that gets thrown our way. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you. Andrew Turner.
Thank you. Just a few comments. Certainly acknowledge the work that's gone into this report and the speed with which the thinking in the report has come together, so thank you for that. I agree that we need to be turning our attention to recovery as soon as possible. Preparing for that's essential. And a lot of this paper actually considers that. It's good that that's been identified on the back of our earthquake experiences. And it's good that we are starting to plan for recovery now through the decisions that we're making today. On the subject of meeting normally, physically meeting, we should be doing that as soon as we possibly can, both for council and for the community boards where possible. But that needs to be balanced that as leaders, we do need to be leading by example, as we are now in terms of the lockdown, but also working remotely where possible under level 3 and above, and of course social distancing at level 2 and above. So there's a balance that we need to find there around effective decision making and transparency, accountability and good understanding on the part of our community of the work that we're doing, but also leading by example in terms of the COVID-19 response and the need for social distancing and remote working. Putting infrastructure projects forward as discussed, I think, is something that we should be doing, and again I acknowledge the work that's gone into identifying those projects in a very short time frame. If there are further discussions to be had on those projects that we put forward, dependent on the approach or the contribution of government, then they're obviously discussions we would need to have at that time. But that's not a reason that we wouldn't be putting forward projects now in good faith under the processes that have been described by Dawn. Now, on the response and recovery matters, I agree that we need a briefing on the matters raised in the paper and on that are raised in the recommendations in order to have the right level of confidence. So the in-principle nature and the noting nature of the resolutions in front of us today is good. I'm certainly happy to support this today on the basis that we'll be fully briefed on all aspects as soon as possible, and as has been indicated in the answers to questions in this meeting, so that by the time we come to make substantive decisions, we can be doing that with the required level of confidence. But I'm happy supporting this today on the basis that this is the first step in a sequence of work that will need to be done as we move to more substantive issues.
Look, thank you, and look, thank you for everyone, for those who contributed by way of expressing views, but also those that have contributed by being here and reading the paper, and and giving your support for what is a very difficult process. I just want to remind people the purpose of the paper. It's the why we need, as a council, to be immediately thinking about recovery. So the references that we've had to the shovel-ready projects and all of those sorts of things, they will be absolutely front of mind when it comes to reviewing our annual plan and our long-term plan. And both of those functions are happening in parallel, which was why it is so essential that we review the letters of expectations that we've given both to the Chief Executive and to the External Advisory Group, because the External Advisory Group is going to really help us go through that capital program for the long-term plan, and we've got to be thinking long-term, but we've got to be putting a recovery lens on everything that we do from here on in, because every single decision we make now will have an impact on the recovery. And I know that I've heard others say it externally, chief executives of large companies through to small business people who are saying decisions that are made now will make a massive difference in terms of whether my business can recover, will make a massive difference as to whether my employees can recover, and a massive difference in terms of whether the city can recover and I can play a role in that recovery. I know a lot of people are hanging on by a thread because they want to be part of the recovery. It's very hard for Christchurch because we've been through so much, but we also know so much more about all of the pitfalls. And I just want to pick up on what a number of you have said. The councillors that were here at the time of the February earthquake, Aaron, James Goff, and Jana Johansson, I'm going to be calling on you to stretch your minds, to think about all of the pitfalls that you know that you faced at this time, because I'm absolutely convinced that we can be offering leadership to other parts of the country at the same time as we are developing our own processes for recovery. I couldn't agree more with those that have said we have got to be looking at value add, we've got to be looking at value for money, we've got to be looking at contractor creep, we've got to be looking for all of those who will game a system if we have a system put in place. It's amazing how many people qualify for assistance when you put a system in place that perhaps isn't as bespoke as what is required. So I'm going to be calling on every single one of you to draw on every life experience that you have to help write a recovery plan for our city. Now, I've realised that what has happened with the debate that we've had, and it's been really useful, and I do apologise that I couldn't write any faster than I did. It's the first time I've done a paper like this for the council, the Greater Christchurch Partnership is not the writer of our plan. What it is what goes on to, it is what happens from the collective post-COVID-19 recovery plan. So there will be an environment that will occur after the immediate crisis has ended, and we will be well and truly into a recovery process. Reaching out to all of our strategic partners now and saying that looking at an existing strategic framework for our collective recovery planning to enable our local recovery planning, I think is very much the focus. So we're not going to not write our own recovery plans, we do. And the economic and social ones have to be hand in glove, which is why I've really focused on how important it is to reach out to our communities, and you're going to be helping do that. We've got to reach out to our communities and we've got to bring them on board now. We've got to share all of our information with everyone that we can. We've got to use the networks that we have in order to reach as far and wide into the community as we possibly can. People need to own this or else we'll see the same thing that happened last time, which is that people completely disengaged when they were shut out of the process. So we've learnt the lesson of the past. We know how to do this. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be long and hard. It is a marathon. I think I personally feel quite proud of what I've written in less than a week. And the reason is that for the one good thing about the lockdown is time to think. So my day is no longer disrupted by anything other than emails, and still there's a happy churn of those. But the truth is that I've got time to think, and I've drawn back on all the experience that I have from coming through the earthquake in a way that highlights what went wrong. We're not going to make the same mistakes again. We've got to find a way of coming together for effective decision making for the annual plan. There is no question about that. So I agree with everyone who has said that we've got to find a way. But let us work through in a very deliberate way with those that are setting the rules around essential services, because at some point, we've got staff that are in the council building now as essential services to enable this to be broadcast. But us all coming into the building at the same time, when it is a clean environment for all of the essential services that keep the city ticking, all the CTOC staff, the transport staff, all of those that keep the essential services of the city running, we have to be very cautious about maintaining that respectful distance from the place. So I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but I'm not saying it's impossible. Please be assured that I will absolutely guarantee and resolve it for the next meeting, that as soon as we are in a position to meet, we will meet in person. So I will give you that absolute undertaking that I will do so. Now, there's been a number of requests that have come in around how we put these motions, and I know that Joe has said, so hang on, I've got somebody wants to put every single one separately, so if that is the view of the meeting, then it's going to take quite a while, so you'll have to stay with me.
Leanne, sorry,
right.
Sam, surely we don't have to do that.
Well, if one person has asked for it, and I think that 4 people have already said yes to it, so
well, it hardly demonstrates efficiency if we're going to spend half an hour voting.
Sarah had a sensible solution, which was asking everyone individually for each one. No.
Just go round the table once.
Go round the table and you ask which ones do you want to have recorded against your name. So say I if you've got any that you want to support, and you say except number 2, because I don't want to receive the mayor's report because I'm just had a gutful of it. So but don't give a reason why. Just say yeah. All right. And something's come through from Joe.
It's for the next one.
Yeah, so we're gonna go round the table. So I'll let Joe take it over. So now I'll move it since it's my report. Is that right?
And Councillor Galloway has already seconded the motion.
Oh, that's right. Okay, right. Okay. So if we could, Joe, if I hand over to you, and if you could ask people whether they're voting aye and whether they're voting no to any of the individual recommendations. Thank you, Sarah. Very helpful.
Okay. Mayor?
Yes, and no.
So yes to all motions. Councillor Turner?
Yep.
Oh yes. I support the mayor report 1 to 6, but 7 and 8.
Can you please, Jimmy, can you please be quiet while the vote's taken? She'll get to you in a minute. Just a moment.
Oh, sorry, I don't know how to push the button. I have no idea because I use my iPhone. I didn't see the screen.
Turn your microphone off. Turn your microphone off. Turn your microphone off while she's doing the vote. And when she calls your name, you tell her which ones you vote for and which ones you vote against.
So,
thank you.
Did you hear me?
Can you turn your microphone off? We'll come to you. I'll leave it with Joe.
You mean my microphone off?
Stop, Jimmy.
It's fine. Hello? Hello? I don't know how to...
Can you take Jimmy's vote, please, Joe?
Okay. Councillor Chen?
Yes. I support the recommendation 1 to 6. But 7 and 8 is true because I'm the abstention.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Chen. Councillor Turner?
Thank you.
Yes to all.
Councillor Chu?
Let's support all.
Councillor Coker?
I haven't quite decided, but I think I will say yes to everything. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Cotter?
Yes, all.
Councillor Daniels?
I was on mute, sorry. Yes to all.
Councillor Davidson?
Yes to all.
Councillor Galloway?
Yes to all.
Councillor Goff?
Yes to all.
Councillor Johansson?
Against 2, 7 and 8.
Thank you. Councillor Kewen?
Yeah, you're just against 1 and 4.
Councillor MacDonald?
Yes to all.
Councillor Major?
Yes to all.
Councillor McClellan?
Yes to all.
Councillor Scandrett?
Yes to all.
Councillor Templeton?
Yes to all.
Okay. That is carried with Councillor Chen voting against Resolution 7 and 8, Councillor Johansson voting against Resolution 7 and 8, and Councillor Kewen voting against Resolution 1 and Resolution 4.
Sorry, I also was against
Sorry, Joe,
Resolution 2.
I'm not against. I'm just abstaining for 7 and 8.
Yes, I've got that, Councillor Chen, thank you.
Yes, and Yanni voted against 2 as well.
Okay, thank you, my apologies.
That's all right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.